Welcome to another episode of Design Wake Up. Today we'll be talking about the fact that big social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram are shutting down or shut down their live commerce streaming features, the reasons behind a low adoption, not just from the end users, but from the marketeers itself. And if we think this will be the end of it for live social commerce, or if there's another shot for it in the near future. So stay around, and if you like our content and you want to support this, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So today I must say it's a very exciting episode for me. It's our 11th episode. It seemed like it was yesterday that we were just starting our side project. Very humble but growing. And I'm very excited because it's the first time we have guests in our podcast. Will and Claudia that very kindly accepted our invitation. So thank you for accepting coming to our podcast. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you.
So
thank you, Marco.
A bit of introductions, kind of the normal things that our listeners like to know, a bit of the background. So Will is the CEO and founder of Founders Media, a creative agency specialized in social media management and consultancy. And Claudia, my good friend Claudia and former flatmate, is senior brand manager for in-home channels for Lavazza, the Italian manufacturer of coffee. But you know what Lavazza is. I don't really need to tell you what they do and produce.
Thank you for the product placement.
Do you guys want to add anything else? Say hello or?
No, thank you for the invite and for having us on.
Cool.
Thanks for having us. I'm sure it's going to be a nice chat.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And the people might be thinking, what does this topic have to do with design, or where does design fit into all of this? And what I always say is, guys, design is much more than just some graphics that you see on paper or even on websites. And hopefully we'll have the time to discuss how we can apply some design principles to marketing as well in social media. So I'm looking forward to that. But the reason why I found this topic so interesting is because, back in 2021, when they launched the live streaming feature for commerce in these social media platforms, in my head, I was like, this is going to work. This is an obvious step from traditional sales in television that only had one way of communication to digital, but it didn't work, right? And it seemed that they had problems getting the marketeers in large organizations into using the platform as well. Perhaps what I'd like to try to get from you is, why do you think it failed in here, especially in Europe? Because everything pointed that it was going to be a massive success. Do you want to go first, Claudia?
Yeah, I can go first. I don't think necessarily failed for now. I still think and I still see a huge opportunity for social commerce, to be honest. It's just probably the way it was implemented. So first of all, I think we need to see the macro context. 2022 I think it's going to be a tough year, and we see deceleration in many segments. E-commerce is not an exception, and e-commerce here, now speaking overall as e-commerce as a whole, it's not an exception, with people going back to normal life. I think we all knew that this was going to happen. Amazon presented actually this year the smallest growth ever, which kind of put the markets a bit on fire. And I think all these things together probably raised some alarms that didn't necessarily need to be raised. Now, speaking probably on social commerce and why I think it's not growing as fast as some people expected that it would grow, I think for me, it's a bit of a cultural shock for now. I think you need to understand why consumers in the first place are in social platforms. They go to social platforms in search for news, in search for opinions. Actually, we see that nearly 60% of users found out about new products on Instagram, which is super relevant. But usually consumers go to Instagram more in search of opinions, learning more about products, getting reviews, etc. So hard selling, sometimes, as some live commerce solutions were presenting, is probably not the best solution for what consumers are seeking in that specific platform. And I think here there's the big need for both the platforms and the brands to work together to make live commerce more than anything entertaining, so that the consumers can adhere a bit more to this. Apart from that, I think it was something quite new, so consumers still need to get used to that. And also I found a very relevant insight that I think it's worth to share, which is there might be a problem with trust. And what do I mean with this? There's been a lot of backlash over the past years with meta platforms for all sorts of reasons, being one of them privacy. And consumers are still highly concerned about sharing their private details and credit card details on these kind of platforms. And actually I saw that 60% of users ended up doing the transaction not on Instagram, but leaving Instagram and going on the merchant's website directly and buying the product from there. So I think there's an underlying issue with trust also here that I think should be taken into account.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I agree with what you said, Marco, in that I was surprised that it doesn't seem to be working, because it seems like a natural transition as you have all this attention and these, 3 billion people on social media now. It seems like a natural transition that you would then try to, integrate that with e-commerce. I think, to answer the question directly, I think the reason it hasn't worked or isn't working is UX and UI. So that links into obviously what Claudia says as well. I think it's, if you take the example of arguably the best e-commerce site in Amazon, it's so easy and it's so fluid, and any uncertainties you have about the buying process about a product are pretty much taken away instantly. So you go onto Amazon, if you want to buy, for example, a mouse for your computer, you can see hundreds or thousands of different options. You can see the reviews immediately. Everything is incredibly fast. Everything is incredibly easy to understand and digest. You can see all the different comparisons. You can filter down your search, whereas on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok shopping, it's a bit more, well, it's not as fluid, and as soon as you found a product you want, 2 seconds later, it's being delivered to your door the next day. Whereas on the social e-commerce sites, it's just not as fluid, and you can't see as many products, you can't see as many options, as many reviews. So, I mean, personally, that's why, I never bought anything online from a social platform in the end. I came close. I added a few things to the shopping list, but never actually did it. And I think it's ultimately because of the UX and the UI. I think, but at the same time, I agree with you, Claudia, in that it might not be sort of over per se. I know that they're changing their outreach to it, but they're not exactly switching off the e-commerce site entirely, Instagram at least. And I think there's, as we discussed before, Marco, I think there's definitely space for an offering which is a sort of in between of your total e-commerce sites, such as Amazon or whatever, and social as well. So I think maybe right now Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, because of the more macro factors which you mentioned, Claudia, maybe they're going back to focusing just on their core offering and their core service, which is obviously, it's a social platform. They were set up to be a social media platform as opposed to as an e-commerce platform. So I think they're probably transitioning, perhaps like you said, Claudia, because of the macro environment, transitioning back to focusing on their core service, and then they will eventually launch something else or maybe partner some way in order to generate that e-commerce side, because I do think there's potential, like you said, Marco, like I said at the beginning, there's obviously potential there to profit ultimately from such an unbelievably huge and engaged audience. Yeah. But it's how to do that besides just using ads. So I think that, the reason in my opinion, the reason it isn't working is the UX UI. But it's how to sort of solve that problem and take advantage of the opportunity, I think.
It's quite really interesting because I was listening to you, both of you, and it's like I go to these social media platforms, and in a way, this Web 2.0 and digitalization enabled companies now to develop a better propensity for, again, developing customer relationships. So it's great, right, for you to enhance the brand value, that in relationship with your clients. And I typically use social media platforms exactly do what you said, Claudia, to find out more about a problem, and then I do more research, and once I build perhaps a different type of trust, not so much a trusting the channels to insert my credit card details, for example, but rather the trust around the product itself. Is it good? Does it last? Will it fit good on me? If I'm talking about apparel, for example, I then go on about to proceed with the purchase on separate channels. I just didn't see myself, or I don't see myself still doing that on social media. But when we look at other sides of the market, other sides of the world, such as China, this is a big trend. Like live streaming for e-commerce is like the big trend, the big thing that is happening today in China. The forecast is going to hit the 300 billion mark in revenues. That's incredible in terms of market share and market size. So what can you take from that? As a marketeer who interprets this data and looks at the future, how can we take what's happening in China? Do we think that this is only something that will work in some sides of the market, and perhaps Europe and the US not so much? Because this happens in products, right? It's all about providing the best benefits for your users and solving something that your users have the need for. There's an education line sometimes that happens, but if you're saying that this is not something that we need here on the side of the world, it will never end. Do you see this as a non-adoption in the more west side of the world, or do you rather see like a trend that will probably see us and future generations to want to see more e-commerce, live e-commerce implemented?
I don't see rephrasing. Actually, what I think is there's a bit of significant cultural differences between Asia and between the more Western world. I think here also we need to have in consideration that live commerce services have been around in China for ages. They've been around since 2016, if I'm not mistaken, when Alibaba did a first experiment using a live commerce service, and after that it was such a big boom that all platforms adopted. So the level of maturity of this kind of services is much higher, and the services are much more developed, and they've been fine-tuned to suit what the Chinese consumer is searching for. In this case, we know that in China there's a big a cult of personality. Meaning that there's a big attachment to influencers. We had like examples with Kim Kardashian going on Chinese live commerces and selling her perfumes in seconds, while in the Western world things are still very new. It's a new world. So I think really what both the platforms and the brands need to do is understand what works for us here to make it work. We've seen that, for example, on the case here with the influencers, they try to replicate the Chinese example in having influencers being in front of social commerce, but then influencers quite jumped out of the projects quite quickly because either they were getting negative reviews because the products were not at the levels they expected. The deliveries didn't go well, so the influencers were taking all the backlash for the sales that were not going so well, so they jumped out. And also I think there was a matter of non-expectations of revenue, so not having this influencers on board, these content creators on board, I think it also hit the service as a whole and the adoption of the service as a whole. But I think here in terms of China, I think we definitely should look into China, how they've made the live commerce services matured from 2016 until the days of today. But I still see it as a huge opportunity, because for brands, I think live commerce being inside a social platform or outside the social platform. For example, Amazon has a live commerce platform in the US now, even though it's a bit hidden. They are doing some trials in this sense. For brands, it's an amazing opportunity to have live feedback because people are chatting in real life. They can tell you exactly what they like, what they don't like on the moment. It's also an opportunity for you to train your brand ambassadors on brand speech. For example, also for the brands that have in-store experiences, they can use this kind of platforms to train their own staff. So I think there's massive opportunities here to create brand engagement. It's just we're not quite there yet on the way we are delivering this experience.
Maybe this one for real then, and I'll just take on what you said, Claudia. Looking at me as a client, I like to be rewarded. I like recognition, with the brands that I have a relationship with. Obviously, I always look for things first, that respond to my needs as a client, regardless of what the market is. But then I like that relationship to be built, and the way for them to kind of build that relationship, touches on a different points, good customer service, but also from a, let's say, brand loyalty perspective, I like to have rewards to compensate for my loyalty. And I also like that kind of recognition to be seen. I just don't think that, and this is my perspective, social media provides that. And I was wondering, I was thinking to myself, perhaps there's a way that we find a midterm here, with gamification and a separate platform in which we enable that interaction to happen, right? In which you can collect tokens from either purchase that you make in the channel or something else that you do that you can kind of retrieve in a, let's say, live commerce platform or live commerce event. Do you also see this as, what's your take, Will, on this? Is this something that kind of resonates with you, or is there rather something else that could be done from a live social perspective to make it work?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point, because obviously so many industries have that reward scheme or whatever you want to call it integrated. I think probably it's the challenge, at least from the perspective of the social channels, is how to do that on such a mass scale of literally billions of people. I suppose it's more that encouraging their users or their company users to do that. So, for example, if we work with hotels, or we work with any companies which sell physical products, we would normally try to instigate or implement some kind of strategy where we can reward the people that follow the page, the hotel or the company, let's say, for example, with a discount code or with a special link or something like that, because that helps us to track the results, but it also helps to give them a sort of USP, if you like, of following via social as opposed to finding them through another avenue. So I suppose my point there is, you're absolutely right. Like, everybody likes the rewards, everybody likes that loyalty feeling in probably all walks of life, never mind just when they're buying something online. But it's how to implement that on such a large scale of social. And I think probably the simpler way anyway would be to give that responsibility to the companies and the pages and the people that are doing it, and how to sort of encourage that, as opposed to right now, if you want to do that, if you want to do a special code or whatever kind of rewards, it's you have to implement that in your strategy and your content strategy, as opposed to, can the social channels sort of encourage that a bit more in their interfaces, in their back end as well. So I suppose that might be, in my opinion anyway, the way to do it, how they can sort of encourage that from their side. Yeah, and I mean, I think touching on your earlier points as well about how this is all different in certain markets, certain parts of the world, I think that's probably a good representation of business on a global scale, right? So even if you look at, strange example, but if you look at McDonald's, for example, if you go to the McDonald's in America, the menu is different than if you go in China, or if you go in London, maybe, it has to be adjusted, right? So I think it's probably also a case of that in terms of e-commerce selling online and with social, and how to integrate it. And I know we discussed before QVC as well in America, and those kind of TV shopping experiences and TV advertisements in America even are so much more dominant than they are here, and I think across Europe as well. So I think it's a good macro representation of globalization really, and business in a global environment. as Claudia said, it's how to sort of take snippets from different parts of the world, like China, and how to implement that to our markets in the West, I suppose, the Western world, in Europe, etc. But yeah, I think it's to answer your question more about sort of loyalty schemes and rewards and things. I think it's how can the social channels from their back end encourage that to be done more sort of routinely, I suppose. Because a discount code is fine, but it's not a loyalty scheme. It's not. It's not. Doesn't make you feel special, I suppose, or not in a personalized sense anyway. So yeah, what do you think?
I think on my take on this. Yeah, my take on this one also, just to add to what Will was saying, which I absolutely agree. Loyalty is key, especially in a time where people grow detached from brands. Either the brand is doing something for you, or you jump out and go find an alternative. So building loyalty is key. I think the difficulty for a brand, especially on social, is understanding who to reward and how loyal the people that follow you on your social media are actually your customers or just people that are checking. So you need to have kind of a different strategy to speak with all of them. So I think at the moment, as things are, and with the several programs or tools that we have available for our campaigns, I think here social media can be a great tool also to collect data so that you can implement your CRM strategy outside social media, so that you can then target your communication to the different leads that you have. So have a good strategy to segment your customer database platform and then build your tailor-made CRM to each one of them, and then you can build much better and much more personalized loyalty schemes for each one of your groups or your clusters inside your CDP.
That's a super point, and I wanted to, if possible, explore more on that. Do you guys have like examples of where you did this, where you used like different sources of data to help you understand your customer segmentation and then plan the activities to get the best results off of each segmentation?
Yeah, I've done it in the past. I think it's crucial to look at your CDP because it's a very important database of information for you to understand who exactly is buying from you, who is interested in hearing from you. And giving an example for a company with whom I worked in the past, where we had different products for different needs, looking at the CDP, which was also showing me the habits of consumption of these people, was allowing me to understand what kind of communication I was sending them. For example, if this person was buying only waters in the supermarket, then for sure this person doesn't want to receive a communication about sodas. Or if this person was buying fat yogurts only, maybe she's not interested in hearing about diet yogurts, and vice versa. So having this data available and understanding exactly what your customers are buying is key for you to build an important strategy or important communication strategy, and also a loyalty strategy, because then you can reward them exactly with what they are looking for. For example, you can send them vouchers, you can send them coupons, you can reward them with experience for something that suits their taste. So it's really important to have these insights available to you.
Do you think that's what missed with this live social commerce task that we had here in Europe, to understand exactly what works best for us in terms of users, rather than replicating almost completely what they were doing in China?
From my perspective, in part, yes, definitely. I think there was a part where it was misunderstanding what people are doing in social media and what they want from social media. So I think live commerce needs to be more entertaining. And you need to understand and build content as a brand that fit each social network. For example, I think TikTok is building the path to make this much more accessible for brands. They've just launched some new, which they're still testing, some new shoppable advertising contents that are actually quite nice. They are fun and they are built with the purpose of providing entertainment. Actually, this is working pretty well. Actually, there's an hashtag that's going viral on TikTok, which is TikTok made me buy it, and shows that there's appetite definitely for people to buy on social platforms. It's just a matter of making them more and creating the content so that they are more native to the platform where they are.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I suppose as well, if we're talking about the research and the collecting data, you can even look a bit earlier in the phase, and as you touched on content there, it's analyzing what content does well and always experimenting to make sure that you can see if there's a new trend which you can latch on or you can create. And I think of social, it's a constant game of experimentation as well. So of course you have to look at the data as to what works well, what doesn't work well, what your customers or target customers and target market want and what they're doing, their behavior, etc. But it's also, what can you try something new every month or every week or whatever to see if actually that's going to do even better. And then gathering the data based on what you have done, and then sort of retargeting and focusing your ads and any future efforts as well towards that. I think with regards to the shopping and the e-commerce experience on social, for sure, I think it could have been more sort of personalized, like you say, and more tailored. I think social is such a massive thing in that nearly everybody has it in the developed world, at least. So therefore, it's incredibly subjective why people go there, right? So sometimes people go to social just to gossip about whatever's happening in their town, or sometimes people go there for inspiration or for news or for education or just or to shop sometimes. So it's hard to filter out those that aren't looking to shop and aren't looking at potentially purchasing or being persuaded by a brand or whatever, and it's hard to just target those, I suppose, as well. On a more sort of macro level. So that's probably what makes it so difficult, right? Because there's a lot of noise in social, and a lot of it is totally fake. A lot of it is not looking for any purchase or any brand loyalty at all. So it's filtering out that noise, I think, which is probably links to the UX and the UI of social shopping in the first place, which we talked about at the beginning. So it's probably part again of that falls under that umbrella again of how to optimize that and make it actually work for who they're targeting, I think.
Okay. So as marketeers, question from your personal perspective, who do you think will be better positioned to lead the way on the future of live social commerce in this side of the world? Is it TikTok? As you mentioned, TikTok is trying something new, Claudia. Do you see the potential in other organizations that don't necessarily need to operate in the social media arena? What's your take? What's your take on what the future will be and who is likely to be the leader in this space?
On social, my take would be TikTok, because I think TikTok are already showing a bit more signs of being one step ahead on understanding what social commerce might mean for us in Europe and in the US. This for several reasons. First, for this new shopping ads that they're launching, which allow you to do your live commerce pieces in a type of content that it's much more native to the platform and to what users are used to seeing on that platform. This is one of the things. And second, because also TikTok are trying different things. This is just massive speculation, but they were spotted hiring massively on LinkedIn for fulfillment centers. So everyone's take and everyone is speculating that TikTok might be moving into a business more similar to Amazon, to what live commerce respects to. So having in mind the issues that you were saying, Marco, about trust issues related to the product quality, or trust issues related to on whether you can return or not, or also to help influencers with the delivery and avoiding all the supply chain issues that was causing some backlashes and some negative feedback. If they are able to control the full operation and also do the fulfillment for the brands, they are in much more control in providing a good live commerce service and probably slamming this trust issue. So my take, if I had to bet on someone inside the social world, would be TikTok. Outside the social world, I think this is something that potentially a big platform like Amazon could explore. They're doing it like very, very silently. I'm not sure why, but I think Amazon, probably for the reasons that Will was mentioning earlier, of the fast or the way you can so rapidly add the product to your basket, order, and then next day it's in your house. I think adding a interesting and easy to use live streaming platform inside Amazon, I think it could be also a big boost and a big way for the future for them.
Well, do you agree with this, with Claudia's opinion that TikTok might be better positioned? And if they are doing all of the things that supposedly they are doing, we are talking about something different here that goes beyond adding new content to the platform. This is a shift or an incremental addition in terms of business model. Is this the future of social media? Is this what the next generation of social media be focusing on, the live component of e-commerce? And how will Meta catch up?
Yeah, I think it certainly could be the future sort of appearance of social. I mean, even in the organic content side, it represents the future of social in that it's short, or typically it's short, snappy, content consumption. So I think it could be even organically. But to my opinion is the same as Claudia's, in that I think it's best positioned in the social world to take over that leash, so to speak. And I think, not to just echo what Claudia said, I totally agree with everything. But also, if you look at the timeline of TikTok as a social channel, I think it's in a better space. So if you think about Facebook's timeline, it started, and it was younger people, teenagers, etc., using it. Then the age demographic went up with time, and up and up and up, and it's still carrying on. And now I think the top age demographic is it 44 to 60 or something like that. And Instagram was the same, followed that. TikTok is the same, followed that. But TikTok is behind. Facebook is the oldest of the largest channels. Instagram is not as old, obviously, and TikTok is much newer, even more so. So I think it's still got, even though it's growing incredibly well and incredibly fast, I think it's still got a lot of growth to be had. And I think it's in terms of its audience, in terms of as a company. So therefore, I think my point is it's better positioned in its life, let's say, to sort of pivot, if you will, towards the e-commerce side. So in addition to everything that Claudia said, I think it would make the most sense if I was a betting man on this, I would go there. Because again, even if you look at it organically, Facebook's engagement rates are poor. Instagrams are going down all the time, which is the birth of my life at the minute. And then TikToks are still good, and probably will continue to still be good for a while. So it's, like I said, it's in that sort of range in the timeline. I think it's better positioned. Outside of social, I think I would have to say, one of the absolutely huge companies, again, not to totally echo Claudia, but probably Amazon, because Amazon have looked into other avenues. They're not just an online bookstore anymore, and they're not just an online everything store anymore. They have shops. Obviously, with Amazon Fresh, which I'm a massive fan of, by the way, and they venture out obviously into TV or live streaming, let's say. So, and then they've got sports. I think the Premier League was recently on Amazon for like, they just started, right, a few weeks ago, I think. So they have the resources, they have the power, they have the expertise to branch out even more into new industries, which is obviously part of their strategy on a large level. So again, I'd have to agree if I had to say something outside of social, but I think obviously within social they're better poised, and I think TikTok is probably the right one. But then Facebook and Instagram or Meta, let's say, have huge power, of course. So I'm sure they still have more power overall. So there's still, as we said at the beginning, there's still potential for them to optimize, I think. But if one was going to take the lead, I'd say TikTok.
I'm going to, on a conclusive note, because unfortunately I would like to continue this conversation on and on, but we're running out of time. Perhaps we'll do a part 2, because I'm really enjoying this conversation. But I'm looking at Facebook's strategy in the last couple of years, or last year. Have they missed the strategy? That's, I think, the question that they need to ask, because they bet a lot of eggs on the metaverse, and they were looking already to the future beyond in terms of how would people use social media platforms, right? And how could you create different use cases in social media with the creation of metaverse. We looked at personal usage, but then there's the professional angle to recreate, to emulate scenarios that you would have on site in the office. But in the meantime, there's a new whole thing happening, which that has an immediate need that clients or that users are screaming to be developed, apparently, right? And I think TikTok is nailing every step of the way to get there, right? Now, you saw with the short clips. I've never been a great user of TikTok because I've always found, and apologies if people who are listening like to do these videos, because I always found those a bit silly, the 20 clip videos with the dances. I just didn't see any additional value for me, at least, to kind of go into TikTok and do it, right? But as they kind of are shifting to a much more platform to empower the users in getting an end goal, which in this case, if they kind of nail the live feature element, get the feedback, get the traction, get the good user experience, and just how they are engaging. To Claudio's point, apparently they are nailing all the right points, and the metrics tells us that the traction, the conversion are higher on TikTok than on Instagram and Facebook, which shouldn't be, right? Because they've been around for such a long time. They should know the market better than TikTok. So they're clearly doing something wrong, I think, in terms of strategy, and perhaps not looking at what the users really are telling them as they should, which is a shame. I don't know. I'm interested to see what's going to happen, because a lot of pressure is now being put on Meta. The results with the metaverse are not being great. A lot of money has been put in. They are missing the I would say the medium term opportunity with, I think, this e-commerce platform. They keep catching up to TikTok. So are they going to be the next Kodak or Nokia? I don't know. And this would be a huge. This is going to be in the next 2-3 years going to be a huge space for us to keep an eye on, I think. But yeah, this was just me ranting about Mark Zuckerberg's perhaps
I
wrong
agree.
way of looking into things.
I agree with most of the things you're saying. Actually, I'm keeping a close eye on what happens with Meta, because things at the moment, as they're not looking great for them. First, there was the privacy issues with Apple. So one of the key things about Meta was the ability to collect data and sell that data, and now they can't do it anymore, or they lost a big of the ability to doing that. So which put them in the big trouble. Then you have the marketing budgets for social, which now are split with this new platform TikTok, which is not that new anymore, and it's increasing. So they're not collecting that much money from advertising as they were before, and you see the company is putting a lot of efforts in terms of investment more on the metaverse, and I think they took a bit the eyes of the ball in terms of social, but maybe we'll can deep dive a bit better into this as well. But at least my perception is that they are more focused now on metaverse, and this can go two ways. Either this can go on like the future and the revolution of how we use all technologies and the internet, or this can go completely wrong, and then Meta probably will be that in a matter of years.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I agree as well with the same with what you said as well, Marco, and I think it's going to be a challenge for them. I mean, as you said, they put all their eggs in one basket, or most of their eggs in that one basket at least, and so it's a big risk. But at the same time, because it's such a big transition, it might just take longer to, the metaverse. I mean, it might just take longer to become a success, because it's something very new, which happens all the time when there's a big innovation, right, in any sector. But let's see whether that's the case or not. But yeah, I think it's in general, as you mentioned, Claudia, like the engagements on Facebook are much lower, okay, and within a certain demographic and in certain areas they're still good, and about certain topics they're still good. But I know that generally, if we look on a bigger scale, it's not where the trend is, right? I know myself and all of my friends or family, to a certain extent, that I ask, which app do you click on first when you open your phone? If you're going to click on social media, which one is it first? It's never Facebook, right? Or if, who's posting every day on Facebook anymore? Okay, some people still, but generally it's people posting on Instagram and on TikTok more. So I think the attention is massively shifting towards TikTok away from Facebook, and Instagram is still obviously in a good position, but you could argue to an extent in the middle or a bit ahead of the TikTok in certain ways, but the growth is with TikTok. So it's, as you say, it'll be a challenging period, but I think they're also so big. It's a question of whether too big to fail in a long-term sense, but we'll find out.
That was a good point, Will. And really, just as a conclusive note, I don't disagree that they should look, at the future in terms of what is likely to be like the big adoption, the next big thing. And I think they did it, in the right way. I think they looked at it again from a design perspective and tried to analyze, what will the trends enable us to do. And I think they should do it. My concern is, and this happens sometimes in a lot of companies, I think, oftentimes you have like two wedges of the table operating in terms of innovation and strategy for growth delivery. You either have companies that keep looking at the cash cow products and invest only on the cash cow products, ignoring innovation, and they end up kind of seeking to exist. This was the case of Kodak, Nokia, and so on. And then you have others that try to look to innovation only, neglecting still the necessity of delivering on continuous growth to have continuous money coming in so that the company is sustainable. My fear with Meta is that they are on the latter, which is they are putting a lot of effort on metaverse and perhaps took it for granted their business without realizing that actually nothing is for granted right now. And my opinion is, if they don't reprioritize at least a bit of the effort into medium-term goals too, and medium-term objectives and results, they might be continuously catching up to TikTok and losing that, to your point, Will, money power that enables them to invest in such big projects like the metaverse. But we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, we are really running out of time. I really wanted to continue the conversation. Hopefully we'll have a second time. You'll definitely probably hear from me again to do a part 2. But for now, I really want to thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation. We'll put the links in the description so that you can find our brilliant guests more easily. And as for us, as you know, we are on all social media platforms. You can follow us on YouTube. Also find our podcast in all platforms: Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Google, you name it. As we said before, we will be launching our virtual community beginning next year. We're preparing our virtual meetups. We're really excited about it, so keep an eye on it as well. And as for me, really thank you once again, guys, for coming. Goodbye, and we look forward for the next conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.